On the x-axis, the carbon dioxide concentrations parts per million. Our targets were about 550 to 950 to 1450, and the results. And what we see is that for carbon dioxide, we see for many of the domains we typically find indoors. It's really useful for forensic investigations. We always measure carbon dioxide in the Y. It's an indicator of ventilation rate. Right? But this study, some work done by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, is starting to change the thinking on carbon dioxide, that it's actually a direct pollutant. Just this week, we're contacted by NASA, who's interested in this, the medical director for the space station, that it's accepted. It's a minimum standard. So these results on carbon dioxide are really striking. The dots here, just for interpretation, those are individual results that people link to themselves. It's a different type of presentation analysis. CO2 concentrations above 2,000, meaning 3,000 parts. Harvard, public housing, around 800 parts per million. Our own work on airplanes, we see CO2 concentrations during cruise consistently above 1,400 parts per million. During boarding, very common Navy, we see concentrations in submarines of CO2 well above 4,000 parts per million. Piers told me he was playing around, and so here we are.
Problem with sensors. You were correct.
So we left right away. Backed up by serious statistical analysis. It's a repeated measure design. So we use a linear mixed effects model. What I think is really interesting in this figure, and it's hard to see at the bottom right-hand corner, the R-square value for the model, 0.81. That means 81% of the variability in cognitive function scores was explained by the parameters we measured. I think that's a shocking R-square value. So we can predict 82% of the variability, 81% of the variability in outcomes by just a handful of parameters. Indoor environmental quality really matters. And participants were blinded. It's actually double blinded, so were the analysts. An important relationship between indoor environmental quality and cognitive function of workers. And the effect is the day up. You see that. We looked at our models for lag effects, but it's the day up. We see these effects. They're real. But we also see that these variables have independent effects, and combined, we saw the greatest effects. The doubling of in this study, we were able to test the independent effect. And we see the direct effect of better ventilation rates. So, wide-ranging implications. The vast majority of US and actually global workforce spends time in these environments. The test we did was focused on office environments, but the fundamental principles apply to all other environments where we spend all this time. Okay. To what we think of the obvious next question. I'm going to pass it off to Piers in a minute, but it's this in practice. We looked at the enhanced ventilation. It's this false choice between energy and health, but no, I think we have to have both. So what are the costs versus the benefits? And
So I hope that Joe has convinced you by now that cognitive function is impacted by the places you live and places you work. And like you said, the next steps are to quantify this and see what are the barriers, what are the costs, and why aren't people adopting these new techniques. So we went different balances of the types of fuel sources they use. So some cities that have all combustion fuel sources, some that rely on more renewables, to see how that would affect the environmental impacts as well. And the goal was to look at a wide range of different ventilation strategies as well. So we looked at 4 different system types: variable air volume system, a fan coil unit system, and both of them with an energy